And the Supreme Court has issued opinions on a pair of cases challenging U.S. social media companies for their alleged role in terrorist attacks overseas. Families of victims in a terrorist attack in Turkey had alleged Facebook, Twitter, and Google aided and abetted ISIS by spreading its messages online. The Supreme Court sided with the social media companies. It also declined to weigh in on the scope of Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which grants sweeping legal immunity to Internet companies. I want to bring in ABC News legal contributor Asha Rangappa, an assistant dean at the Yale-Jackson School of Global Affairs, along with senior Washington reporter Devin Dwyer for more on this. Thanks both for being on. Devin, let's start with just a recap here, the details. What were these cases about?
These are big cases, Diane, closely watched by the Internet industry in this country. A lot of concern that this could upend the way we experience the Internet. And today, the Supreme Court gave them big reason for a sigh of relief. These are cases that involved victims of two different terror attacks, one in Turkey in 2015, the other in Paris in 2017, involving one American college student who was killed there. And the families of those victims went to U.S. courts seeking to hold social media companies accountable for what they claimed was some role in helping ISIS, the terrorists that carried out these attacks, recruit and radicalize members online. And the Supreme Court today, in a unanimous opinion by Justice Thomas, basically said these victims' families had failed to state a claim. Justice Thomas said that the conclusion was that their allegations are insufficient to establish that the defendants, the social media companies, aided and abetted ISIS in carrying out the relevant attack. Justice Thomas, Diane, went on to say that simply existing as a platform that some potential rogue actors had used, tweeted about, posted videos on ahead of these attacks is not enough to directly link them to the attack and to the deaths of these Americans and other innocent victims. So a big reason for relief this afternoon for these companies.
Asha, how tricky is a ruling like this when it comes to weighing the rights of these social media companies and their users versus the interest of slowing down or preventing radicalization?
Yeah, Diane, I think this gets to the distinction between a legal question and a policy question. You know, the court says that the link between these social media companies and the specific attack that was an issue here was too tenuous. But they do note that these platforms are used, even if the platforms themselves are neutral, that the features there are very powerful. They allow for extremist groups to radicalize and connect people and to fundraise. And so I think that there is a policy question here of how we can continue to allow these social media companies to function. We don't want them paralyzed by lawsuits, but also to clamp down on some of the ways that terrorist groups can facilitate their recruitment. And we saw this even here in the U.S. with the Stop the Steal movement. And I think it's a tricky question, especially with, you know, a Congress that may not be super technologically savvy.
Devin, you say these rulings could have changed the way we experience the Internet. How so?
Well, the Internet, Diane, was founded on this idea that these social media companies ought to be able to be places of free expression, exchange of ideas, and that they ought to be immune from lawsuits for what people put online in our feeds, the photos, the commentary, that they shouldn't be sued under federal law. And in fact, Congress has recognized that under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, says that they're largely immune. And these cases sought to challenge that, sought to raise the bar for when they can be sued for a nexus to terrorism. And I talked, to pick up on what Asha was saying, a lot of advocates, though, say even if the court sidestepped this as they did today, there's still a big reason for Congress to get involved. Here's a little bit of what Frances Haugen, the former Facebook whistleblower, told me a short time ago about why something needs to be done, even as tough as this case was.
What happens in a world where YouTube is responsible? That's a really hard question. But people were exposed to this information who would not have been exposed to it if these recommender systems hadn't put it in right in front of them.
No digital service wants their products to be used by bad actors. But to try to use liability here is actually going to produce a contrary result.
And that was the head lobbyist for the internet industry, Diane, and they had been saying loudly they spent a lot of money fighting back against these cases, saying that if they could be held to account for some role in these attacks, that it would have forced them to change the way algorithms operate, change the way they police content online, not only be very expensive, but could alter the way that we experience and participate in these very popular platforms. And so they're very happy today with the outcome in these cases.
Asha, you say these social media companies right now are financially incentivized to not police themselves. So what comes next here?
Yes, we're back to another policy question. You know, these social media companies are built from the ground up to make money from advertising revenue, and they make advertising revenue by things on their platforms that engage people, that keep them on, that keep them active. It turns out that the posts and content that gets the most engagement tends to be extreme content. So there is this, shame spiral where they are sort of dependent on some of this extreme content to make money. And I think we need to change the incentives here to change the full landscape.
All right, Devin Dwyer, Asha Rangappa, thank you both.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.